Good evening, everybody. And if you're just tuning in, you're listening to 105.3 and 107.7 out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. And you're listening to UFO Paranormal Radio Network, otherwise known as United Public Radio Network, or just UPRN. Sorry, guys, I'm trying something new with Instagram. I don't know if it's streaming or not. It's showing a check, but it wasn't playing. So we'll see. I guess we'll see if it's working or not. They just added it to StreamYard. So we'll see. I'm going to introduce our amazing guest before. She's been on the show many times. And I should tell you what show this is. It's the Angel Rock. And I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. I'm a Canadian spiritual psychic medium, crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, spiritual teacher and mentor, registered nurse, well-versed in the paranormal, have studied near-death experiences professionally and personally for over 40 years and had one as a toddler. And I got something new to add, a budding animal communicator. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Just a few housekeeping things. If you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe and tell your friends and family. Also, we've got all kinds of new hosts and new shows on the network. On this network, we stream multiple shows daily, 7 days a week. And when we're not streaming, the archive server is going. And this network's been around for over 25 years. And the archive server randomly picks shows to stream. So you get to hear great content from over the last 25 years. There's something for everybody. I see a Facebook user. I'm going to highlight them. So just so you know, and I will highlight you. You got a couple options here because if you've been to my show or my second show on Thursday nights with my amazing friend and co-host, Angel Channel and Medium David Hansel, with The Thing at the Foot of the Bed on Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. But with Facebook, and I know people have done this, but just so you know, you come up as Facebook user and I will highlight you in the left-hand corner on the screen if you're watching. So what you have to do is go to streamyard.com/Facebook and just give them permission to say yes to using your picture, your name, or you can put your name just behind the comment, or you can stay anonymous if you like. And if you want to join in the conversation, we've got Jonathan Keyworth here. We've got a Facebook user. So if you want to join in, what you need to do is go over to UFO Paranormal Radio and United Public Radio Network. It's one long title on Facebook and YouTube. Also, we're streaming on the Angel Rocker Tribe with the Angel Rock with Lorilei Potvin. That's the name of my group. And I'm not streaming yet to my Facebook profile. I have given up with them, but I will share it once we get talking. We're trying Instagram on the Angel Rock. We'll see what happens. I guess I'll see it afterwards. We're on Canada's Most Haunted. So there's multiple places you can watch. And when you join us and when you're watching, then we can see your comments and you can join in the show. Now, on to my amazing guest here. I just adore her. We're friends. I met her years ago, but we were babies when we met, right, Varla?
Yes.
And I met her on my the Angel Rock, but on my previous network. And she's been a fan favorite. She's incredible. She's amazing. I'm going to read you a bit of her bio. Varla Ventura is the author of Varla Ventura's Paranormal Parlor, Ghosts, Seances, and Tales of True Hauntings, along with fairies, pukas, and changelings, a complete guide to the wild and wicked enchanted realm, and numerous other fantastic books. And she does have a lot of fantastic books regarding the strange and the unusual. And tonight, we're going to be talking things spooky, possibly Yule, Winter Solstice, all kinds of things. Welcome, Varla. Thanks for the patience with the long intro.
Oh, no, I love listening to you. Thank you for having me again. It's always fun to be with you.
Isn't it much easier now? I have a booking calendar. Why I did not think of that years ago.
I need a booking calendar.
I set one up, and how it came to be. One of our, she's been here for a bit now, negotiating happiness with Adriana Fiorestro. I always say her name. I try to say it properly. She's on Mondays in the daytime. She's got a fantastic show. It's got a lot of business tips, like with social media and stuff, and mom stuff and parenting. It's a great show. And I was a guest on there, and she sent me a link to her booking calendar, and I went, what?
Ooh, Calendly. Yeah. So organized.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's easy because what happens is, like, especially I work with Gavin. I don't know. You might know Gavin Lee Davies. He's over in Wales. I met him from Jason Bland's Paranormal Soup.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then that name, that name sounds familiar, but
Well, he
Been
works
a number
for a
of years.
publishing company and he does PR, and he has a dream to work
Oh,
with. He
okay.
sends me the best guests, but they're all over the world. So sometimes it involves like 20 emails back and forth without the booking calendar. So it just makes
Oh, yes. Yeah, it is so nice to have that. Well, it makes it
Mhm.
easy for your guests as well.
Well, I just told people I never thought to before. Most people I have on my show, I don't meet them till 5 minutes before they go on the show because everything's done by email, right? So you
Yeah,
don't meet in
yeah.
person.
That's always so interesting, the virtual relationships that we cultivate.
Yeah, thank God for the internet. You have the whole world
I
at your
know.
feet.
It's literally a little magic network, you
Okay, so
know?
what's going on with you? I have not caught up with you, and we're always so busy. So what's been going
Yeah.
on with you? Let me know what.
Well, I love this time of year, basically from about, early October
Yes.
through late December. It's just, it's sort of just getting darker and darker. I mean, today where I live, it was 3 o'clock and the light had changed.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, and then where I'm, getting this glorious sort of sunset light like around 1 in the
Oh,
afternoon. So
yeah.
it's I find it to be like for me it gets me very I don't know, I get genuinely excited. I really do enjoy sort of those longer nights, and especially if I have something that I'm working on, and I'm happy to say that I do. I have a new book
I
that I'm
knew it.
working
I don't know why. That's why I asked you, what's up with you? I can't wait
yeah,
to hear.
yeah. I'm working on a new book. It will not actually be out until 2025. So
Oh,
the
wow.
manuscript I'm handing in spring of 2024, and you'll, I think, love the topic. It is a collection of fairy and folklore, but exploring specific plants. So it's basically a book of botanical lore. So
I
it's
think you
going to
were
be
talking about that when I had you on
I've
the
been
last.
trying to sell it for quite some time.
Mhm.
And I did. So hooray. So
Yay.
publisher picked it up and I'm working on that. And then I have a couple of other kind of side projects that I'm working on as well. So I finally launched my podcast, which is called Midnight Stories.
Finally. Yay.
And I've just got one. I've got another. I realize that I'm probably a little bit too anal retentive about making sure I have all my research done rather than just sort of like going on there and winging it. But um, I basically am taking topics, usually paranormal topics
Mhm.
that I have touched on in my books or kind of talked about, and really sort of picking them apart and telling the story a little bit more in depth. So, the very first episode is about this amazing woman named Ida Craddock, and she was a sort of early member of the Theosophical Society, and she didn't exactly identify as a spiritualist, but
Mhm.
she was also a sex educator, and she sent out materials to educate. This is in like 1850, I think. The
You're
first
reading
public
my mind. I'm thinking, was this Victorian age or before?
Yeah, yeah, it was she was born in the mid 1800s, so she was
Wow.
like 30 something, and she was publishing these materials. She was publishing them herself,
Wow.
or would get small publishers to publish them for her, and they were these little pamphlets. I believe the first one actually came out in like 1899, and these were she had Right Marital Living, and the other one was gosh, what was the other one? It was called The Wedding Night. And these were basically advice. It was advice to young women who, keep in mind that at the time, bearing an ankle was considered lewd. So really like a really buttoned up time period. So
Mhm.
you can imagine that there was very little talk about what would be expected. Of course, you were a virgin going into your wedding, right? That was presumed,
I'm
and
sure
so you
that
had
was greatly appreciate it though, because we still have cultures where sex is taboo. And where do
Yeah.
you go for the answers, right? Or
Yeah, well, and can you imagine being like, a young girl betrothed to probably an older woman, or I mean, older woman, that would have been nice, an older man.
but not at your choice,
Yeah, if you had
probably.
any
And
choice, but the truth is you didn't. And so, but you can imagine like just how scary that was. And so her goal was really to educate young women. But the great thing about her and sort of the whole plot twist with Ida Craddock is that she claimed she was not married. And this was like explicit advice, mind you. Definitely explicit for the times, somewhat explicit by today's standards, only in that,
wow.
there's words that she uses that are where, you're kind of like, oh, okay, she's just going for it. And yeah, I had to put an explicit warning on my podcast thing there.
Podcast?
I mean, it's not like lewd necessarily, but she talks about body parts, the clitoris and
I
such, and
was thinking that,
yeah,
like, when you
totally. It's like,
and
ooh,
such,
the
you know
C
what I
word.
thought? And I wasn't
Yeah.
gonna say it. You know how the big joke is the roadmap to the clitoris.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So she did. So she totally she talked about that. She talked about like, basically advice like, hey men, don't get drunk and smoke a lot and just be gross on your wedding night. Like make this a
True.
nice experience. You'll have a happy marriage. And she was advocating for it for the longevity of the institution of marriage. Well, she was like persecuted by this ridiculous man named Anthony Comstock, who was sort of self-appointed postmaster general and also was the head of the Society for the Suppression of Moral Vice. So I know it's like, oh God, you just couldn't do anything around that guy. He didn't even really like swearing.
And he was
Um,
probably the worst when there were not people around. Don't you find even today, by today's standards, the ones screaming the loudest are
are the
usually
ones with some zip drive that is going to doom
Mhm.
them. Yep, absolutely. So yeah, so the first episode is all about her and her amazing story, but the plot twist is that she claimed to gain all of her knowledge of the marriage bed and all of her knowledge about sex thanks to a holy union with an angelic being named Soph. And
Wow.
she writes about this extensively. This plays into her story as far as like being persecuted and being considered an unstable woman. Just like her story is one of those things that like there's just so many there's just so many incredibly moving aspects of her story and a lot of layers to it. But anyway, so I talked about her a little bit here and there in my books and sometimes in like interviews and stuff. But I just got really into the more of the nitty gritty of the stories. I think it was like 45 minutes just about Ida Craddock.
I want to know
Um,
all about this
it,
angel because
she's
I
amazing. Yeah.
I don't watch a lot of TV, but my guilty pleasure has always been Supernatural and that TV show that was for 15 years. And I've
Hmm.
gone back through some of the episodes that I found kind of, a lot of, especially the monster episodes and even the angel and the demon ones. I remember my partner Dell, who we had quite a bit of issue when the angels were made out to be kind of evil and the demons were evil, but they sort of befriended them, right? We were like, what are they trying to say here? But the whole reason I
Yeah.
bring this up, they did an episode when the angel Castiel was in there of a woman who had a holy union apparently with an
Mm-hmm.
angel. If you watched it, do you remember it? Because she
Mm-mm.
had a
I
little
don't.
girl and somehow she had done a spell to basically live forever, this woman, because
Mm.
she was avenging I guess, Castiel hundreds of years ago came as a morality squad from heaven as the angels and murdered her husband. And
Oh.
she kept alive. She had to give an eyeball, so she always wore an eye patch
Oh.
to maintain her longevity. and to see that her daughter was safe and had grown up and what have you. And in the end, I forget how it ended, but she didn't obviously end Castiel because he's one of the main characters, but he had changed and evolved, and he had admitted how wrong he was. So it's very interesting. That's what this reminds me of, that storyline.
I mean, they could have very well been inspired by this true story of hers. And I actually learned about her reading some of Aleister Crowley's works. So there's this other fantastic kind of, occult connection with her. But she wrote this pretty amazing essay called, I believe this one is called Heavenly Bridegrooms. So she had her
I'm fascinated.
She had her sort of her I want to call it her straight work, right? Like that was her publications that were about the wedding night. And then she also wrote these really really in-depth essays from a spiritual point of view. And she sort of kept them separate because she was intelligent enough to understand that this needed to be separated from this. Not everybody wanted to know about this, but the essay is fantastic because it's basically like the first, I'd say like 2 pages of it are all examples of unions between, like whatever off-planet being, like angelic beings. And she cites the Bible because she was raised with religion. So she was very knowledgeable of the Bible, and she cites the Bible over and over again and gives all these fantastic examples of angelic or non-human entities and human marriages. So basically she just it's like her dissertation. It's really fabulous. And she's a great writer. Very Victorian.
Yes, Dave and I were just talking, my co-host from Thursdays, how much we love the Victorian age. And we're doing something with another host on the network. You would just love her, Varla, Carrie Lynn Shellhorn. And she's a fellow Canadian too. She's got Spirit Switchboard on Fridays.
Oh, nice name. Spirit Switchboard. Yes. I love that. Yeah, I love that.
It's from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. And December 1st, she does the 12 years of giving. Or 12 days, sorry, not 12 years, 12 days of giving. And so she had asked Dave and I what we thought of this. And I think it was day 11. I sort of let the cat out of the bag. I didn't realize she kept it like an advent calendar secret the morning of, and then you get to know what's going to be given away. And she gave away some great prizes. And then so day 11, you had to be on her page at Psychic Medium Carrie Lynn Shellhorn, and people could enter in there, and randomly there was something she used, some program from off the internet, and it picked the winner. So this Friday from 6 to 8 p.m., David and I and Carrie Lynn, and I'm so sorry, I know she's looks like a lovely lady. She's joining us. It was somebody that entered. They get to spend 2 hours with us, and
that's fun.
Talk about paranormal. We can talk
about that's very interesting.
She loves Victorian too. We were talking about it, the three of us, about how much we all love the Victorian age. But I got to ask you this. So somebody added Facebook user. I'm not sure who this is. Hi, Sandra Sharp. Hi, Michelle from, we got Australia. She's here for a little bit. I know she listens when she's getting ready for work. We've got somebody that knows you because they said, hey, Varla, but we got lots of Facebook users.
Oh, because it just says Facebook user. That's what you were explaining at the beginning, that unless you give permission, it just says Facebook user.
Yeah. Or just put your name behind.
Give me a code word so I know who you are.
There's a music note and a happy face. So I don't know if that'll help you or not. And then they said, found it. I'm not sure what they found, but they added it.
Okay. Well, this is going to be a fun night.
Yeah, it is. Well, no, but okay, so I've got so many questions because I've done shows before with my previous co-host that I knew from the network I was on before, and we've done shows on spectrophilia, which is basically sexual relationship with ghosts, right? Or the other thing I've really known a lot about now, whether people believe in demons or not, we'll just say a lower vibrational entity. And I have met people that have told me personally their experience with something of that nature, that they know just where to touch you, like everything, like incredible, blah, blah, blah.
Hydrocratic would agree.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
wondering. How did she know it was an
Oh,
angel? Mhm.
I'm just gonna take her word for that.
Yeah, not looking for
I'll
work.
take her word for that. I mean, whatever she wants to call it, it was worked for her.
Hi, Nick.
Um, and actually, there's a really hilarious quote about. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but I read it in the episode that I recorded. But basically, she says that not only did she have sex with this entity, but that it was so loud that the neighbors would complain.
On her part, because I have had people contact me. I would never, that's the one thing I would never ever do is give away anybody's personal details or anything. But I had somebody once contact me and ask me if they could ask me about their quote unquote visions. And this person in particular had a near death experience. And I don't think she realized how powerful she was, because as she started to talk to me, it was like she was like sending me pictures in my mind,
Hmm.
and I could tell what was going to happen before it did. And she would call it a vision. And I don't think it was a vision. I think it might have happened while she was sleeping, like an abduction. But she
Hmm.
described the individuals, and the one of them, I think it was an Arcturian. I ended up finding him on the internet while we're talking, like a picture. She goes, "Oh my God, yeah, that's exactly what it looks like." Because I could see the picture she was sending me. Anyway, she said that she was strapped to a gurney and that these three different types of beings were there. And she said one of them was between my legs, and then I knew right away, right away, right away. And I won't get too graphic because I know there may be family members listening, but basically she said it was the best experience ever had in her lifetime. And I already knew she ended up having a baby apparently in these.
Oh,
And I've heard of this before. It was a
interesting.
girl. Of course, physically, she did not have the child, but she was asking me, like, why is this happening? And what am I feeling? It was really interesting.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Oh, very interesting. Yes. Well, I mean, you can imagine there's something, and you and I have talked about this before
Mhm.
about like the terms that we use for
Yeah.
things. Um, you know, like you said, the word abduction, right?
Mhm.
Like the people have been having those kind of
Mhm.
experiences for hundreds of years,
Mhm.
but have used different words for them.
Mhm.
So it's always kind of interesting to make those connections with like modern day. And I can't say for sure what she did or what she didn't do. I mean, I kind of just consider it my duty to tell her story as
I
much
love
as
that
I
you
can.
have.
I
Mhm.
mean, as much as I can with as much detail. And also, I think the thing is, and that's sort of what Midnight Stories is. That's what it's becoming anyway, because the next two episodes are also about these kind of further stories about these incredible women during the spiritualist movement. And they're women that I've written about, but I've really kind of unpacked the topic a bit more. And I I think as a woman in the paranormal,
Mhm.
I see other I see beyond kind of the material that's presented to me. And I don't mean I'm making assumptions or I'm like channeling anything or anything like that. I just mean when I read an article that calls this woman who channeled a novel via the Ouija board, calls it a publicity stunt and calls her jilted. Anytime I see the word jilted, I'm immediately like,
Triggered.
okay,
Mhm.
there's more to this story, because that's a label. That's a witch hunt generally.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so, and we all know what happened with the witch hunts, right? Innocent people died. Like that's what happened. So I mean, there's no way around that. Witchcraft is not a crime,
No.
and people were tried, convicted, killed in horrible manners for something that was not actually a problem.
No,
So
and I think people were
shouldn't
threatened.
laugh, but
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm. No, but I think people were threatened by it, right?
Mhm,
And it
mhm.
was a very, with no disrespect to men, but it was a very patriarchal society where, you had your heads of the church and your heads of cities
Yeah.
and towns, and, and like the gentleman with Ida, who made himself basically the morality
Oh,
police.
yeah. Oh, and okay, so I don't want to give the whole story away because I'd love for you to listen to my podcast. But she is just, I mean, it's not my story, it's her story. She actually has these like fantastic, so she's persecuted by this guy like for years. Years. Like I think 7 to 9 years. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a really long time. And he's repeatedly has her arrested. And then eventually he gets her, and he gets her for the distribution of lewd materials through the U.S. Postal Service, which he had passed a law and convinced Congress to pass a law about as I think he was the secretary of the postmasters or something.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, he's the head of this suppression of moral vice. And then he's also working with the U.S. Postal Service. And he basically sets it up so distribution of lewd materials is a crime punishable by prison. And then, meanwhile, he keeps persecuting her. And eventually, he's able to actually try her under the Comstock law, which is the law that he's responsible for. And what happened is she would send these materials to young married couples or young brides to be. She would send them through the mail. That was sort of how you got them. You'd see an advertisement in the back of a magazine, and you'd send 50 cents or $1 to the PO box. So he did a sting operation. I mean, what a small man. Like why aren't you looking for the child molesters? Like, why are you going after this woman?
Yeah,
honestly. So, sadly, actually, Ida takes her own life because she's basically faced with, but she's persecuted multiple times, and does a small stint in like a women's institution, and then is actually released. And he continues to persecute her. That now she's basically faced with life in prison, which in those days, life in prison was actually for her. It was the home for the criminally insane, like Blackwell's Island type situation. And I think she had already been in an institution like that. And as history has shown us, these were hardly humane places. And so she took her own life because she didn't want to spend the rest of her life in a institution. And she left 2 letters. And one of the letters was a very personal letter to her mother. And the other letter was a letter to the public. And the letter to the public, and this is why she is one of the most remarkable women in history, because even after her death, she spoke the truth, and she told the entire public that this man had been persecuting her. He had been persecuting her for materials that she did not deem lewd, and that she had numerous members of, the quote was like, upstanding members of society have purchased this from me and have given me, permission to use their names, and have told me that they think what I'm doing is positive work. And then she goes on to basically call him a sadist and describes what a sadist is, and that she believes, he is a man who gets pleasure from these thoughts. These, like, in other words, he is pot kettle. Right?
That's usually how it is.
Yeah.
Screaming the loudest, right? And I'm a true believer in what you put out there eventually will find its way back to you.
So it's sad. I mean, the way her story ends is sad, but it's also remarkable because it was a way for her to tell the truth one more time, and that really it stayed. And then actually, like years later, Aleister Crowley read Heavenly Bridegrooms. And so he had this publication called the Equinox. And it was like pamphlets that he would put out, it was a journal, basically. It was like an occult journal. And he would review occult works. And of course, at the time, these were all very super obscure. Like, it was mostly all self-published, or like booksellers that dealt in esoterica would would publish these things. Anyway, so he got his hands on this, and he was very moved, and actually felt that she had made genuine divine contact, and I believe like posthumously awarded her like a 4th degree in the OTO, which is, you know, I mean, you have to, it takes people years to go through each degree in the OTO. It's part of the tradition. And so he felt that she had obtained knowledge that was that she had organically obtained knowledge that people worked years to try and get to that point where they were worthy of receiving that information.
So he was that moved by her story. I'm going to share some of the comments.
People think he was
them. Oh, go ahead.
He was impressed upon what she said, and I think he said, while I hardly agree with everything that she wrote about, I hardly agree with everything she wrote, she has demonstrated knowledge that only an initiated person could obtain. In other words, someone who is initiated enough to be able to make that contact. So I mean, and that's high praise from him. Yeah. Definitely high praise from him. And just kind of, and I think that's one of the ways that her story sort of stayed somewhat in the underground. And then a man named Vera Chappelle was he was an absolutely remarkable man, and a member of the OTO, and did extensive research on Ida Craddock. And there's actually a book that he put out that includes all of the letters, and he looks at it a little bit more from the occultist point of view. So there's a couple books out that are much more historian, and those are also really good. But I love Vera's book because he understands the magic that she was talking about, and that's, I mean, magic is almost like a too trite of a word in a way, you know, for what she was dealing with.
She was definitely ahead of her time, and I'm glad.
She had like she had like an office in Chicago that people would come and they would get sex counseling. You know, I mean, like this, we're talking about like 1890 through 1895.
Like you said, showing an ankle was Let me just say hi to everybody here.
Yes.
We've got Michelle from Australia. I think I said hi, but just if you didn't hear it, she's usually, like I said, gets ready for work. She's over there, and she shared a comment. Linda Nelson says hi. She said, can't stay long. Well, we're just glad you popped in. So this is a comment she added. We could probably do a show on spectrophilia. People love talking about it. But I have heard of this before. So 80% of our audience is audio only. So I always read the comments.
Great, yes.
So Michelle added, my girlfriend who lost her husband had a sex dream with him well over a year ago after he passed. And she said it was so real. And believe it or not, and I'm sure you'll agree, you've heard this too. I have heard of many women, especially if they were married for years and they truly seem to have been very deeply in love with their husband or had a very healthy relationship, you know, with sex, that I've heard of this happening. Have you heard of it before?
Oh yes, absolutely. I think it's not as talked about. Like, I think, you know, you've already got like sex is a little bit taboo to have discussions about, and then you add to that ghost sex, and it really starts, you know, people just definitely don't want to talk about that. But absolutely. And I think just kind of in conjunction with that, I do think the dead return to us in our dreams very frequently. And I think that that's a way that psychics, but also people who maybe don't identify or are yet to identify as psychics, can get a lot of messages and can really connect with the other world. Because we're
open, we're open, right? Whereas what we think runs our world, our mind, and really it's our subconscious, higher self, whatever you want to call it, that's always on. So when the mind is sleeping, you're open. So I always tell people, especially Michelle, thank you for sharing that. You said that your girlfriend, your friend, that it was so real. I would bet money that she was definitely experiencing what she felt she was experiencing in the dream. And we can, you know, then you get into astral travel and what we do. And
then you also, like, I mean, quite frankly, then you face right square in the face. You know, what is the difference between what we perceive as reality, as in the square walls around us and the things that we can physically touch, and the things we know intrinsically, and why are we so quick to dismiss those messages that we get when we're in that relaxed and open state? Why is it that we are kind of constantly there's that constant voice of doubt, of reason. I mean, we've sort of structured our society to
Absolutely.
to prove things all the time. And I'm not opposed to that, right? I mean, science is one of my favorite things, right? I love science, and I love learning about new developments and incredible cures, and incredible people who have thought in a very innovative fashion. But when you move so far away from trusting instinct and trusting those feelings, you're actually kind of suppressing innovation. So, I mean, I'm not saying everybody needs to go into a fairy trance, but, it's not going to hurt you. But like, to be able to access that other realm, of possibility.
Though, let's go back to even Ida, for example. Okay. And before then, you worked hard, you ate from the ground, you was a lot cleaner, healthier living, but you had a lot more downtime when it was time to rest. And so for people to look at meditation, is not just for, and I know you know this and many people listening will, but for those that don't, you don't need to sit on top of a mountain in the lotus position for 3 hours and chant, or if you want to, by all means, but you don't need to. But we don't know what to do with silence, even in a conversation, right? People are uncomfortable with silence and feel they've got to fill it in. Whereas if we can learn to quiet the mind, like I think we could back hundreds of years ago, I think we would get a lot more innovation, we'd get a lot more understanding, and we would receive a lot more information, don't you?
Oh yeah, and just to be able to take a break. I mean, this morning I had an appointment and I forgot my phone at home.
Oops.
And I had time. If I really wanted to. I could have driven back across town and I could have grabbed my phone. And I thought, why? So I can sit there and look at all the things I can't get done. I'm going, and I just, this is a, I didn't mean to forget my phone. And there's always that anxiety as a mom, right? It's like, oh, I want my child to be able to get a hold of me if they need me. But in the grand scheme of things, there's other people on the emergency contact list.
So, everything happens for a reason.
But it was so nice, because I just did all the things that I had planned to do anyway. But without my phone in my pocket, I had to actually stay very present in those very menial tasks, going to the post office and all of that kind of stuff. But it was very oh, okay. I wish I had brought a book with me, why don't I have the novel I've been reading? But yeah, I think just that busyness, that busy mindset, and not being able to take that break, then, and unquiet the mind, is very difficult. I know I had one of the most fantastic psychics I've ever met was this man named Jack from New Orleans. Jack, if you're still out there, I still love you. He was studying to be an undertaker. And he worked at a occult shop in San Francisco, and he was very tall and lanky and had flowing hair. And he was such an amazing psychic. And he said, "Oh, you're a psychic. You're fine. All you have to do is just shut it." And this was before cell phones, right? So this was 1998 or so, when some of us had computers and we all had TVs and stuff. But we had an answering machine and a phone in the wall. And he said, if you want to really hone your psychic abilities, just don't read the paper. Just give yourself 7 days. Don't read the paper. Don't watch the news. Don't not leave your house. Go out and do things, but don't rely on those things for your information. See what you notice. And when you start noticing that, you do. It's, I mean, there's all kinds of creative practices that talk about this.
You know who does this? First of all, I'm going to stop. Hi, Howie Odell. I'm going to give him a shout out. He's got the Riff Nation Network. David and I have been a guest on the show, The Orion Effect. And he says Varla Ventura, beautiful name. So I wanted
Thank you, Howie.
but you know who does that? And when Dell, my partner Dell, that you know, when we met, well, I've known him my whole life, but when we sort of
I'm always kind of expecting Dell to just pop in on the side there or something. He's not allowed.
Found out. So, anyways, we were friends, right? I had no intentions of becoming romantically involved with him in any way. And I remember him explaining to me what he noticed in a room when he walked in. And I said, oh my God, that has to be exhausting to live in your. And I said, wait, you've always thought this way, haven't you? And he said, yeah. I said, you don't know any different. I said, you do realize most people don't think this way. And what it is, he walks into a room and he will notice the pattern on the wallpaper. He will know where all the exits are, where the windows are, who's over there, who's got this, who's like, he just takes it all in. And in the beginning, he used to say to me, did you notice blah, blah, blah? And I'll go, no, where was that? But now I am doing that. And you know what? It's important because you start to pay attention to your surroundings, not from a place of fear, but it helps you notice a lot more, I think, in life, like all the little details. And then I think it helps you be better able to read people. And it's been a skill I've learned to develop. And I can say I'm not sorry about it. Because we're never taught that, right? Like you just show up and either you're listening or it's TV you're watching or you go to a movie or what, but you don't take in all the details.
Yeah, you don't take in all the details. And then also you're, well, I know I have a hurried mindset frequently.
I do too.
An impatient and hurried mindset. And
Mine's
sure,
patient,
that's great. It's patient and hurried. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I'm externally patient. I can be infinitely patient with children and people and anyone, but me. But I think, I actually recently I've been doing some writing workshops in my community, facilitating writing workshops.
Yeah, the last time you were here, weren't you doing it with kids?
Yes, and I finished this amazing workshop with teenagers, or I guess they're teenagers. There were probably some 12-year-olds, but they were 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and we did it in October, and we did this sort of like Halloween. Spooky story themed, and these kids were just so incredible, and I really enjoyed that. And then I did another couple of courses with really young kids. One was imagine trying to do writing with kindergartners. It was kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, and then the third. Yeah, I mean, it was a big learning experience for me because I love children.
Me too.
And I went into it with low expectations for actually any writing happening. So that was important to do because I didn't want, and I also reminded myself, these kids are tiny and it was an after school class, so they've sat still all this time. Yeah. And most of the time we ended up I just read them stories and they colored and they were really happy. That was really, really adorable.
That's teaching them the beauty of what can be contained within a book, right?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, we were doing some kind of story time, something storytelling related. But we played some games and it was a lot. There were a dozen of them and just one me. So that was a challenge. It was a lot.
That used to happen to me at school, especially my eldest kid's class. I'd be one of the moms that would go, and invariably I would get the worst behaved kid always. Well, you just seem to know how to handle them. And it's like, oh, dear Lord.
Yeah, right. Well, there was one little boy who constantly was introducing murder into the dialogue. We would play these storytelling games and he would introduce murder and draw bloody axes and stuff.
I
I
like,
never asked him why. I just went with it. I just honored it. I was like, okay, I'm not going to
it's the
criticize
nurse
you for
in
that.
me thinking, okay, either this child, I would hope, is, and not being judgmental, but I follow true crime too, right? And we see
Right, right.
the start when they're
Oh,
that age.
I think he probably has older siblings and
That's
watched
what I was
some
wondering.
YouTube
Maybe some,
videos. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
feeling maybe true crime in the home or something that he's seen.
Yeah. Oh, he told me he watched some kind of zombie show and and I was just like, okay, I didn't make a big deal out of it. And I
I wouldn't
think
have
part
either.
of it was like, let me see if this lady reacts when I bring up murder. And I'm like, ha, wrong tree, buddy. Let's go. But I also had to be mindful of, the kids who were very young and wanted to write about snowmen and princesses,
And they may not
but it
have
was
heard about murder and zombies.
yeah. And they'd go like, "Oh, it died." And then I said, "Well, here's the thing. You got the next line in the story, change it.
Mhm,
You're the author, change it. You
mhm.
can change the story." But it was really I think like why we were kind of getting to this was just that talk about needing to be in the present and not be hurried, right? So a kid says to you, well, I don't want to do that. I just want to lay on the floor. And I'm like, okay,
For
as
it,
long as
go
you're
for it,
not
go for it.
kicking anyone, like go ahead,
See, it's
go
not
lay on
just
the
the
floor.
mob and me. You could never say the words like stop hitting, don't kick, whatever, because kids with autism sometimes get stuck on the kicking and
Ah,
the hitting.
ah,
So I used to have to say, okay, hands down, feet go out on
yes,
the floor.
yes. I said, there's only
Yeah,
one rule, and that's keep your hands to
right.
yourself. And that,
Yep,
I said, I don't care if you stand, I don't care if you jump up and
yep.
down, I don't care if you dance. Oh, but it was the most charming thing is that for 45 minutes, I had 12 kids under the age of, I think the oldest one was probably 7.
Mhm.
I had them, I did like an illuminated manuscript
Mhm.
lesson where
Yep.
I had them. So illuminated manuscripts are the manuscripts like the Book of Kells, right? Where there's letters in there that are very intricate and decorated. And then there's drawings around the edge. And so the words aren't just words, they're decorative words.
Yeah.
And I had them 45 minutes, those kids made illuminated letters. And
That's
it
impressive.
was great. And I said, "Do you guys know what the word illuminated is? Did you know that word?" And they were like, "No." And I said, "It's basically magic. Let's just go with magic." I'll just go with that.
I am so impressed
It
because
was cute. It was real cute.
after a full day of sitting. But speaking of spooky stuff at this time of year, we were going to talk spooky. You said you
Yeah.
downloaded some spooky stuff. Should we talk about it?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. I mean, that is what is happening right now.
Mhm. I said hi
100%.
to Sandra too. I want to make sure I said hi to Sandra. Jonathan was there. If I missed you, please just say hi again, and we'll shout you out. Before I get talking.
Yeah. 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 We want to say hi to everyone.
Yes, Varla has the spookiest, most incredible story. She knows I love fairies, but you've done books on vampires and werewolves and
Yes.
mermaids and the
All the
strange and
things.
the unusual. And
I mean, honestly, like mermaids are among the scariest, right? Because I mean, can you imagine? Like, so we think of mermaids I always get booked on shows to do mermaid stuff, like in the summer when people are
hello, what about my
swimming.
name? The Lorelei's, the
Yes,
sirens.
yes, yes, in the
I'm
same
not
river.
Lorelei. It's spelled
Yes,
Lorelei. I said Lorilei, but I am named after the mythology of the
yes,
Lorelei's.
yes, which lives in the same river. And if you don't know that story, it's essentially a siren like, mermaid like creature
Mhm,
that lives in the river that flows right through the center of
mhm,
Paris
mhm.
and is said to lure men, meaning
Thank
mankind,
you.
but especially men, to its shores and entice it to go for a swim.
And
And
die.
then they die. Yeah. And they die and they drown. Yep. Yep.
I
Very,
see you've
with
got nothing to
beautiful
worry about. I
voices.
can't sing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very similar story to mermaids, that idea of distracting and having this beautiful enchanting voice, and it's so distracting that you don't realize what you're doing, and then the next thing you know, you run your ship aground,
Yeah.
or you're swept away on the current.
Mhm.
So of course, they don't go away. So I always think of mermaid. I actually like have like a sort of a early January mermaid moment every year where
Oh,
I
really?
think,
Mhm.
oh yes, because I was once in Ireland in the very beginning of January, and
Mhm.
it was incredibly cold, and I was on a on a ferry out to this island where there were no other people, and it was just this really incredible, very very quiet time, and but like I was like almost like a ghost in the infrastructure of tourism because there was no one there, but this ferry was going out there and the things were happening, the bus was going, but there was nobody going there. So it was just me. And I always just think like, yeah, of course there's you think of mermaids in the summertime because that's our time when we're in the water.
Mhm.
We're beating the heat. We want to go swimming, but
Mhm.
when you start really thinking about it, so they're still there. And in fact, their teeth are sharper, and their voices are louder, and they're more treacherous in the winter when really a few minutes in the water could kill you.
Mhm.
So yeah.
We know that living by Lake Superior, we
Oh
thought, holy
yes,
cow, and it's got its own almost Bermuda Triangle in Lake Superior, so
sure does. That is a force to be reckoned with. That lake. It is no wonder that the stories that surround that lake are so rooted in treachery and it having its own sort of life force, and um, having to really really be respectful of it. It
definitely.
just up the on the Canadian side in Sault Ste. Marie, there's a bunch of petroglyphs,
Mhm.
and you can kind of climb down, and they're along the shore, and there's actually a depiction of the Gitchigumi monster, which is this like incredible long serpent with like it's kind of it's kind of dragon like, but it's a little bit more flat, and it's
That's what
got a lot
makes
of
it
spikes.
that's what the sleeping giant is called, The Legend of
Yeah,
Nanavishu, but it's also Gitchigumi is
yeah.
mentioned too.
Yeah, I think it's probably the two different languages, right? It's
Mhm.
the Ojibwe
Mhm.
and yep, yep. So,
Carrie Lynn, who I mentioned, is from Sault Ste. Marie. If she was
oh
here, I
yeah,
get her to talk to us about the petroglyphs because she could
oh
tell us the
yeah,
story.
yeah. I mean, I climbed up there one time and checked them out, and I was just there's some like humans doing some stuff, but then like
Yep.
all I remember is the serpent who has this spiked tail that it gnashes it splashes down in the water and creates the storms.
Ooh,
So, but certainly, okay. So you said something earlier though that I thought was really interesting because you were talking about the was it Carrie Ann?
Carrie Lynn.
Carrie
Carrie
Lynn.
Lynn. Yeah.
And you just happened to say two things in the same sentence.
Oh, did I? What was it?
You said you were talking about the 12 days of Christmas, but she was calling it 12 days of giving, right?
Yep.
Then you
Mhm.
also said something about a cat.
Did I say something about a
You
cat?
did. We if somehow the word cat showed up, I believe.
Okay.
I think. I
Okay,
mean,
well, tell me
we'll
where
have to
you're
go
going.
back, right? But it made me think, and I thought, oh, it's so funny. I wonder if she knows that we're going to talk about the Icelandic Christmas cat.
I have had the weirdest thing with my psychic abilities
Hmm.
in about the last 3 months. Like, and whenever I do a show with you, you and
I
I
know, I
going
know.
to ask you something and I got goosebumps. That's my
It's
sign.
insane. I
Mhm.
actually, I'll just total side note, but there is a lot of this is the veil is extraordinarily thin right
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
So other people out there listening will completely relate to this and understand. And I'm just here to support you and say, yes, what you think is happening is happening. The veil
Mhm.
is thin. Psychic awareness is very high. There are messages coming from beyond, but there are also messages between the living loved ones. If you're thinking of someone, it's not just because it's the holiday season. This is stuff is happening, and an excellent example is you know, rather than throw all my money at Target, I went to my local metaphysical shop to do all
Oh,
my Christmas shopping for
I
my
love
nieces and
it.
nephews.
I love it.
And I was standing, and it's this amazing shop that's near me, and they have every single crystal is labeled with a beautiful little card. You get to put your glasses on so you can read everything,
Yes.
and every little card, and it tells you what the principle of that stone is for. And it's really nice. A lot of places just sort of lay them out and they hand you a card, but this is like very thoughtfully arranged. It's like dozens of altars arranged in this store. I mean, they don't just have stuff in a pile, you know, everything's very, very carefully arranged. And
Purposefully.
yes, and so I'm thinking, okay, so I had my list and I'd gotten all the things, and just like reading and looking, and then I thought I saw this deck, this particular oracle deck. And I hope my niece is not listening, because this will be a Christmas spoiler for her. But I was standing there.
Plug your ears if you're listening.
Yeah, I saw this deck and I was like, "Is this the right deck for her? Is this the right deck for her?" And right when I got to the word tree in the description, someone at the counter, completely different conversation, said tree. So I was like, "Oh, well, that's interesting." And then I got a little further, and then her name, I'll just say her name is Aurora, and her name was in the further in the description. And so I thought, oh, all right, that's enough for me. But it's little things like that, right? I mean, I know you could just say, oh, this random coincidence. Of course, random coincidence is reigning supreme right now. And it's not a coincidence.
I would call
actually.
it serendipity, because I do not believe in coincidence.
Yes, serendipity. Right? Okay, so there, our minds just totally melded on the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It is. It's serendipity. So yeah, I think that culture comes from in many ways. Iceland is in and of itself sort of this incredible modern blend of folklore and you know, high intelligence. You have major innovations in Iceland in terms of climate change and how to deal with poverty, road construction, all these kinds of things. But Iceland is also this incredible place for fairy lore. And anyone who has read up on Icelandic fairy culture will recognize that Iceland is the place where you build entire roads around sacred places. You do not go
under
through
the
them.
ocean, and that isn't it? I think it's
underneath.
Iceland that did it.
Did what?
They put the
under
the ocean.
Yeah, because you can't go through the mountain. You can't go like that. So in Iceland, there is a belief that there is a Christmas witch. Her name is Grulia.
Okay.
And she is not a friendly witch at all.
Okay.
She is very threatening toward children. She is essentially the epitome of frostbite, right? Like, she is treacherous. And should she catch children doing things they shouldn't be doing, or catch them out too late, especially on Christmas Eve, they will be hunted, and they will become food in her cauldron.
Oh my
so
God.
You do not want to mess with Grulia. But Grulia, and actually Dale and I think maybe like 3 years ago, we did a little holiday episode, and we talked about her Yule lads. So, and you might remember this. Do you remember the Yule lads? Yeah. So the Yule lads. So there's Grulia, and she's a witch, and she has these. Basically, she's got these 13 kids. These her sons, the Yule lads, and they all sort of go about. They're a little bit more like mayhem and mischief, and each one of them represents a different night. They come about during the 12 nights of Christmas, and then the day of Christmas. And they've got all these fantastic. You actually have the list here if you want me to read it.
I remember.
Yeah. They've got, there's a sausage stealer, there's a pot licker, there's a candle snuffer, there's a door slammer. It's like this fantastic list, and they sort of sort of epitomize the things you wouldn't want children doing at the time, but also common things that were going on. There was one that steals the yogurt culture that's percolating on the counter. So, you kind of have like, the one's a window peeper. That's a little bit creepy. It's like, but then again, think of as a parent, right? You don't want anyone peeping in the windows as you're wrapping, surprises. So they all really make sense. So those are the Yule lads, and then you also have this Christmas cat. And so the cat, I'm just gonna pull my. I always like thinking of all the yes. So she also has this. Let me see, what else do I have about Grulia the witch? Yeah, she looks for naughty children to boil in her cauldron. I've got bullet points here. Grulia looks for naughty children to boil in her cauldron. Yeah, so they come down from the mountain, and I called her part troll, part animal, all mother. She's got 13 Yule lads. I do have the list of the Yule lads here, so I'll make a crude attempt because I think they're really fun. And they actually started on the 12th. So the 12th of December through the 24th, and then the 25th would be the 13th. So you've got the 12th of December. It's already passed, and that's Stick Yastur, and that is the sheep coat clod. And I honestly don't know what that is. So his day's passed. Gilyagur, and that's the Guligok. And I have a note, actually, the 13th of December, and that guy preyed on cows. So I don't know the language well enough to figure out that. Stufur, Stubby.
Okay.
Also known as Stubby. That's the 14th of December, and he's the stubby pan stealer. So he steals the pans off the stove.
Okay.
Pure Screw Liquor, that's the spoon liquor. I think that's self-explanatory. 15th of December.
Watching for this, or they're supposed to avoid this? Like,
they come. Yes, exactly. They come each night, and so you have to make sure that you've behaved and that you've done other things like tidied the house and locked the doors and gone to bed on time. Because if you stay up too late, these Yule lads come in and they'll wreak havoc in your house, and there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah, and this is a very similar sort of discourse across helpful or any kind of fairy or fairy creature that can come into your house has the ability to bestow great treasures and luck upon you, but also has just as much ability to punish you if you have misbehaved or been lazy. Okay. So you kind of got to meet them halfway, right? Like you want a brownie to come and clean your kitchen, put the dishes in the sink at least, rinse them.
Gotcha.
So let's see. Well, it was 17th of December, so that was last night. That's the Aska liquor. He's the bowl liquor. Okay. Yes, I said that. It's how it sounds. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. Tonight, we have the Huraskiller, which is the door slammer. If the door starts slamming tonight,
teenagers, especially girls,
slamming. That's what I thought. Yeah, I was like, no door slamming. Yeah. I know, right? I've slammed more than one door in my life. Yeah. The Skiergummer, that's the Skier gobbler, with the Skier being the Icelandic yogurt. So they come and eat all the yogurt out of the tub. Björgen Necker. If anybody out there speaks Icelandic, correct us.
You're doing a great job, because I wouldn't have done it like this.
I'm sure I've got it wrong. The Björgen Necker, and that is the sausage swiper. That's the guy you were remembering. I don't know why
I remembered that one. The sausage stealer.
Because he steals sausages. You want your sausage. And then you've got that. So that guy is actually the 20th. So be warned, coming up. And then the Gluga Gegur is the 21st of December, and he's the window peeper. So, draw your curtains that night. Gata Peffer, there's the door sniffer.
Okay, what's the difference between a slammer and a sniffer?
Well, one sniffs and one slams. I mean,
on the door.
Yeah, one sniffs and one slams. The Ketchup is the 23rd of December. He is the meat thief. So he just comes and takes the meat right off the hook. So
Okay.
it's just, I love these names also because they sort of immediately hearken you to this time in which meat is curing on a hook in your kitchen, you know?
And that would be no Christmas dinner.
Yeah, I mean, it's post-hunting season, right?
Mhm.
And then finally on the 13th, the 24th of December, we have the Kurtasniker, and that is the candle beggar. So apparently he comes around trying to take all your candles. Now, if you overlap this with some of the, you know, more Christianized stories, you would see that you know, candles are part of the offering. But even in pagan times, like candles, I've got multiple candles going tonight. Like candles are our way of bringing that hearth right inside. If you don't have a fire, or even if you do, candle was a way for light. And on these dark nights when it's getting dark at, you know,
Well,
3,
especially in Iceland, don't they have
especially in
24
Iceland,
hours of darkness? They don't even
it's
get sun.
so far north. I mean, they're in the Arctic Circle, yeah, like Alaska and parts of Canada, yeah. So it's really important to have reasons to stay inside. So the Christmas cat, basically the Christmas cat brings new clothing to people at Christmas.
Wow.
And basically, if you don't get this, basically it's a tradition in Iceland to receive clothing, some article of clothing, for Christmas. If you don't receive that, the Christmas cat's already on the prowl, and the Christmas cat is kind of just out there, like looking for people who did not get this traditional gift and preying upon them. Basically looking for people who aren't gifting clothing. So I've heard jokes about it, like, oh, you know, it means like the Christmas cat is looking for naked people. Not really. Christmas cat is just looking for anyone who is trying to break tradition, because if they do, basically they will take your life, or at least, you know, bat you around the way a cat would. So yeah, the moral of the story is don't be caught outside on Christmas Eve in the nude. No.
As if you would in those
If you're
temperatures.
working on a sweater, get it done, and get
Where
it
does the
out there.
hygge? Is it hygge? It's H or
Oh yeah,
HYGGE. Because
yes,
that's a big thing
Higgy,
here. I know
yeah,
all the stores. Hi, Kathy Henley Little. No worries. You're
yeah,
glad you're
yeah.
here.
I think that is a um
Is it Norwegian?
I think it's either Norwegian or Swedish. I know that it's a
Oh, Swedish. You're right.
yeah,
It is
and it's
Swedish.
basically the art of like winter nesting. That's
Mhm.
kind of what it is. It's like cuddling down with a, you know, super cozy
Cozy. Yeah.
fur blanket and a nice big glug of something warm, and just sort of like nesting and being indoors and embracing that, which is a wonderful part of kind of as we come upon the solstice and the longest night of the year. We
For
fight
people
the
that
dark.
don't know, what night is that?
What's that?
For people that don't know, when is the longest night of the year?
Yes, the longest night of the year, I believe this year falls on the 20. So the solstice moves slightly because it
Yeah.
wasn't established by a Gregorian calendar. So it moves a little bit each year. So frequently the solstice is anywhere between the 20th and the 22nd. And I believe this year it falls on the 21st. I mean, it's usually marked on the 21st, but the actual time of the long night might be a little bit different depending on like what time zone you're in, and the day of the year. But we generally mark it on the 21st, and that is coming up like next Thursday, I think. And
This
it's
Thursday.
this coming. Oh wait, this Thursday. Yes, it's this Thursday.
I
It's already the
know.
18th. Ah, lost track of time. That's a common
So for
theme for
people
me.
that don't know, Varla, what is the solstice? And we celebrate it twice a year, do we not? The solstice?
Yes, we celebrate the winter solstice and we celebrate the summer solstice. And in
Mhm.
between those points, we have the equinoxes.
Mhm.
So the solstices are, the summer solstice is the longest day of the year and the shortest night. So the times when we have the most light, and the winter solstice is, of course, when we have the most darkness. So it's literally the longest night of the year and the shortest day. So of course, in many places it gets dark by 3, 4 in the afternoon, sometimes earlier, depending on how far north
We
you
were
are.
talking about that, right? So at
Yeah,
the
yeah.
beginning.
It's great. It's great. I
Mhm,
mean, I love it. And
mhm.
actually, the solstice is this point in which it's kind of, the darkest. It's getting as dark as it can possibly get. And then from there on out, it gets lighter.
Mhm.
And this is a time when, this is all of our traditions of stringing up lights and burning candles and putting candles on trees and making offerings to fairy entities with milk and cookies. These all stem from the understanding that it in that darkness we find the light.
So, okay, so getting back, because I was talking a little bit about this. I think I was a guest on a show last night at the last minute, but I was also talking to somebody about this off here, that it's not just Santa Claus and things like this, right? There's so many different beliefs
Yeah.
and characters, if you will, for Christmas, right? Like I have a friend that's from Austria. I don't know how he found me, and he's German, and he calls me Lorelei. He always calls me that, right? 'Cause
Lorelei.
that's what they would call me, the way it's spelt in Germany versus Laura Lee. And he sent me this video, and I just love it. I actually posted it in my group. It was last year. And he was out and about, and there were four, and he goes, I know you all call it Krampus. He goes, it's Krampus. And so he took this video with
Rampus.
four live Krampuses, and
Uh-huh.
they're all saying hi to Lorelei in the video, and I have it.
Oh,
And
fun.
so, what do you know about Krampus? Because it's like the
Krampus.
thing that
Yes.
bears here, right? And he said it's not over in Europe. It's a positive.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, basically throughout the season as we're approaching into kind of, the winter solstice
mhm,
and the winter holidays, there's a number of rather beastly creatures
mhm.
that are out there gallivanting about. And Krampus is among them. He is basically this sort of like horned god, really. He's this like
He thought
demonic.
it was Santa Claus's brother, is what he said.
Yeah, so in Austria and I think also in Germany
Mhm,
and other parts of Europe, they're sort of the counterpart. Krampus and Saint Nicholas are counterparts to one another, and they have, I think their nights are like corresponding. It's like the 6th and the 7th, or the 5th and the 6th, and you have Krampusnacht and you have Saint Nicholas's night. And Saint Nicholas is the one that bestows the good things on the children and rewards people for their hard work. And Krampus is the one that takes all the naughty children.
mhm.
So today, sort of in, United States and Canada, because we have so many cultures that have meshed together to form our culture, we have Santa does both of those things, right? He leaves coal in the stocking for the naughty children, and you have to be naughty, you're in the naughty list or the nice list. Santa sort of became our modern Santa embodies both of those. But Krampus is basically this he's covered in fur, he's got giant horns, somewhat demonic, very goaty hooves, and he sort of clomps around with
He always
chains
has
and a
that
big
long
stack.
tongue, that really long tongue too, right?
He's got a long forked tongue, and
Mhm.
he's got chains, so he sort of rattles as he walks around, and you can hear him coming. And he has a sack that he throws all the naughty children in.
Mhm.
And he is not the only kind of terrifying creature around that time. Another one is this sort of witch creature called Berchte, and she's a little bit kind of like the Icelandic witch. Like, she doesn't put children in the cauldron. She just sort of slices them apart and then
Ew.
throws them in her sack. Yeah, I mean, she's horrible. She's
Doesn't
absolutely
Italy have
horrible.
a Christmas witch too, I thought?
Now, Italy has a very charming Christmas witch, La
Yeah.
Befana. And La
Yeah.
Befana is, she comes about in January, and
Okay.
she's lovely. She goes from rooftop. She's honestly, I think La Befana is who we should credit for any semblance of the modern Santa Claus that we have today. Because
Ooh.
La Befana goes from rooftop to rooftop. She rides her broom,
Mhm.
and she clears away the bad luck from years prior, and she uses her broom to sweep away all of the last year and welcome in the newness.
Mhm.
And she leaves treats for children in their shoes or on their windowsill. And of course, if you've not been good, you don't get a treat, or you get, like a rock or something.
Mhm.
But she's this lovely Italian Christmas witch. And
Mhm.
she kind of comes around in early January. And I mean, come on, she goes from rooftop to rooftop, and she's like, and then I have some friends that are German, were raised in Germany and live in the United States now, and they leave their shoes out. They don't hang stockings. They polish their shoes and leave their shoes out. That's
I
their
have
tradition,
heard
to
that
like
in Dutch
leave
too,
treats,
right?
and and leave the little treats in the shoes. And so yeah, it's really interesting to look at all the different ways that all of these magical creatures from different parts of the world have sort of melded together into this, modern day Santa Claus. The Calancansoro,
Mhm.
they are usually found in Greece and other parts of the Mediterranean, and they're also very Krampus-like, and they're sort of um, demons, kind of more just like horned god with like a lot of fur and very evil face. So you might call it demon or devil. Krampus is frequently depicted, especially during Victorian times. There's a lot of images of Krampus as sort of a devil.
Mhm.
Um, but the Kalankansoroi are these Greek like demons that live underground, and they come out during the 12 days of Christmas, and they are not kind. They are not forgiving, and they are quick to sort of steal you underground, or kill you, or just thrash everything that you love.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, there's like life threatening creatures out there for sure. So
That's just
it's
mind-blowing.
amazing.
Or like when you go through even, but I was thinking about this, right? So we have positive and we have negative beasties and creatures, as we do at most times of the year, right?
Yeah.
The way
Yeah.
the weather is, you know, spring, fall, winter, you know what I mean, right? But
Yeah.
my whole point is all around the world, and this is the point I was trying to make, and I'm not trying to crush anybody's, belief systems or dreams or whatever, but this is where we got into this last night with Sean. I was on his show. He has a Sunday night show here, an hour show, and we were talking about Christmas and December 25th, and that really is not the day Jesus was born. And the roots of this, and where it goes actually most Christianity, a lot of it is based on paganism. Would you agree? And
Oh, yes. Yes. I think that um I would say that a lot of the significant celebrations are based on pagan
yeah,
traditions, and especially
that's even, mhm,
sort of the Roman Catholic Church was moving
mhm,
north into Europe, and you had these traditions of people having big bonfires and then donning animal skins and
mhm.
dancing around them to ward off the evil and the disease and the sickness and the hunger that comes with with Christmas.
With
Yeah,
winter.
real bummer with winter. Yeah, with winter.
Mhm,
The things that come naturally with the season, right? It's
mhm,
not a time of abundance. It's actually a time of scarcity. And so that the flip side of that is to gather together, put on those skins,
right?
ask for help, like don the furs, ask for help, stay warm, look out for one another, burn the Yule log, have
Okay, so what's a
gatherings.
Yule log? Let's stop there for people. A
Oh,
Yule log. What is a
yes.
Yule log?
So the Yule log is essentially a ritual offering on what you would consider Yule, which is traditionally the longest night of the year. And the Yule log is sacred because it is the log, it is the thing that gives you fire and light on the longest night of the year. Very much like at Halloween time, it was at Samhain, it was a tradition to have a bonfire, is a tradition to have a bonfire and take a coal from that bonfire and bring it home to your hearth. And that would instill sort of good luck and prosperity for the coming months. So too with the Yule log. So the Yule log is just this beautiful way of honoring the original tradition of having a bonfire, basically, like having a community bonfire, and really making an offering to the darkness, burning something into the light. If you don't have a fireplace and you don't have a Yule log, a matchstick will do, right? Light a candle and think of that matchstick as it's the connection with wood, and trees, really, that you're kind of saying thank you for growing, for being, for falling, for being harvested, and for then in turn being burned and giving us light, right? So that's all part of and that is a very, it's a very pagan, very druidic kind of approach. Anytime you're invoking the spirits of the trees or nature, you're dabbling in witchcraft, right?
But and then if I remember correctly, even with December 25th, and I did a bit of research, but you guys, if you got questions, Varla is the person to ask with the amount of research and knowledge she has. But isn't it based, because somebody wanted to know last night what planet, and I thought it was Saturn and based on the roots into Saturnalia. Could I be right
Oh,
about
well, so you have Saturnalia, which is another celebration that was in around this time of year. And that was another sort of like wild, raucous, sort of original. I believe the Romans, like the Romans practiced
Mhm.
Saturnalia.
Yep.
So the OG Romans, right, before the Catholic, spread of
Before
Christianity.
before
Yeah.
Constantine and the whole thing. Yep.
Yeah, before Constantine came rolling in on his high horse. So, but yeah, and
And we're not
so
talking the Keanu Reeves Constantine.
but Saturnalia was another time of just abandon. It was a time of sort of, it was like the Burning Man of its day, right? It was like anybody could come. It could be senators, it could be, peasants, and they would come and they would participate in this celebration. They would make sacrifices to Saturn, who is Father Time, who is also akin to Odin, who is also akin to Santa Claus, right? Big bearded guy, kind of in control of time, lots of magical abilities.
Mhm.
And it would be a time to just sort of like rebel against that. And I think you can look at any sort of, healthy rebellion is the backbone to any functioning society.
Sure.
Rebellion against the things you're afraid of, having some kind of outlet. When you don't have an outlet, that's when, wars ensue, essentially, right? So the ancient Romans knew this, and as a way of, this was very common, and it's widely seen through many of what we still practice today as our like sort of like calendar holidays. But it was very common to take a celebration. If you were trying to conquer someone and convert them to your beliefs, you're not going to come in and say everything you know is wrong. You're going to say, I think you have the story a little wrong, but why don't you come in at the same time that you always come in, and we'll give you the same foods that you've always eaten. But instead of lighting your candle or lighting your bonfire, you're going to come in and light a candle in church, and you're going to hear what we have to say, and we're going to give you all this like food for free, and we're going to give you all these perks. So it's much smarter to overlap with something that people are already celebrating than try and invent a whole new holiday, right? So you
That
just
makes
get
sense.
in on there and you kind of start planting the seed, and then year after year and generation after generation, it becomes immersed in the culture, but you still have some of those traditional beliefs, Christmas trees among them.
That makes sense though for people because that's the fastest, basically it is the fastest and easiest way to affect change, right? Exactly what you said. Make it change a little bit here, next year change a little bit more, a little bit more. And
Mhm.
I always say I believe that it really only takes about a generation and a half to affect a major change.
Mm.
Because if people don't learn what the true history is, for example, and they are told something as a small child, they grow up, now they've had their children are into their teens or late teens, meaning a generation and a half, right? The history can be completely changed. And
Mm-hmm.
especially when we didn't have the internet and stuff, how could you look back, right, and see what the
Mm-hmm.
truth was? I'm just going to
Right. You're just trusting people's words.
I'm going to read Kathy Hanley Little's
Oh yeah,
comment,
this is
and then
beautiful.
yeah, and then we can about the Christmas tree, why we use the Christmas tree. Celtics or Druids would bring a pine tree in the house and put food in the tree for the wee people. It was said they did this for the wee people to stay warm on cold nights. That's beautiful,
Yeah.
Kathy. What do you think?
Very beautiful. Yes, the tradition of the Christmas tree, totally bringing in the nature from outside, bringing it in the house and making sort of a sacrifice. It also was often done outside.
Mhm.
Before it was even brought into the house, you would put candles and you'd put lights and you'd put decorations and you would put, offerings, because you weren't just leaving food for the birds or, whatever animals were out there scrounging in the winter, but you were also leaving offerings to the wee folk, the fairy folk, the good people, and these would in turn look out for you. So if disease or something evil was tramping your way and coming toward your house, they would have the ability to either warn you or,
Ward it off.
yeah, ward it off. Yeah, and that's honestly like you may have heard of tomtes or nisis, and those are those little sort of
Excuse me.
they're the nisi I believe are Finnish, and the tomtes are Swedish, but they're kind of very similar. They're little sort of gnome-like creatures, and a lot of
Can
times
we
you see
call them
renditions of
gnomes?
them. Well, a lot of times you see renditions of them, and they're like just like a log. They're a log. There you go. And they have a decorated, they have a hat, and you set them um, on your doorstep, and they ward off any evils in the dark of night, and they welcome in the good wishes.
Well, my co-host David and I guess I've heard them referred to overseas as gronks. I have been in love with gronks or gnomes for the
Oh,
last
they're the
few.
best.
David too. Like we send pictures all the time to each other. We don't get a chance to talk all week. We're so busy, right? So Thursday's our show day. So we love cats. So we send each other cat videos all the time and stuff, or gronks, or I guess I call them gnomes.
Yeah,
And every season, like I've got homemade wreaths with gnomes. I've got there's
they're
lots of
wonderful.
gnomes. I'm going to be
Yeah, and and you look at them, and they've got the red hat and they've got the beard, and you see
just
this
a gnome.
connection with how the images of what we think of today as Santa Claus,
Mhm.
we have those similarities. Although at one time Santa Claus was depicted, in Finland, Santa was always in blue robes. And I've been to a couple of Finnish Christmas celebrations, and Santa comes in with a broom, with a broom,
Oh.
which is very interesting.
Well, Dell
And
asked about blue earlier, and I didn't want to get off on a tangent off topic, but maybe we can with the
see
blue.
over there saying, "Well, ask her about blue."
He did. He did. He was in here, and I'm going, no, no. That's why I muted
I
myself.
saw you looking on screen. I was like, Dell's interrupting.
Yes, he was. And I was like, get
Hi,
out.
Dell.
She's mine tonight. When we were on the same night, he's not on the network anymore, but when he was, we used to put together a 3-hour show with you because we had so
Yeah,
much
just
fun with you. Mhm.
join in. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, the blue. So they come in with blue robes because this is what's been coming up. Because I've mentioned it before, I work with two very close friends, and we connect with spirit, and we connect with some beings from the other side, involved a lot with science and things like that. They give us a lot of information. It's a long story, but it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. We don't know what's
Yeah.
coming with it or what, but this year's supposed to be very powerful and very interesting with it, especially being the year of the dragon in Chinese, I guess astrology, if you want to call it that, or horoscope.
Hmm.
So, but the color blue keeps coming up.
Oh,
Blue.
interesting. Have you noticed my
Including
room is blue? This is like the bluest room,
not
and yeah.
even, okay, and I'm not being conspiratorial or anything, but if, say, something was using D period, E period, W period, I'll be careful what I say because we're on YouTube. it can affect every color except blue. If
Hmm.
it's blue, it will not burn. And we're seeing blue, like blue tooth. There's all kinds of blue coming in. So I know why he asked about blue. And now you're mentioning about Finland,
The
that there's
the blue
Mhm.
robes of Santa Claus. Yes, he wasn't always depicted um, in red. In fact, frequently it would be in these gorgeous cloaks of blue, which to me just invoke the night sky that you see more of in the wintertime. You
Mhm.
see more of this beautiful, deep midnight sky, and you see more stars. And I always think of, honestly, there's imagery of Mother Mary that's very similar. She's associated with
Uh-huh.
blue
Mhm.
and frequently with a veil or a sort of scarf of dark blue covered in stars.
Mhm.
Something that, just another connection there of
Blue is a
the
primary color too. You can't make it. It's yellow,
It
red,
just is. Yes,
primary.
and it's naturally occurring in nature, right? So naturally occurring in nature, but yeah, it's naturally occurring. And we know it's a healing color. We know that it has certain kind of
Water.
attributes that bring on a feeling of healing.
Or
Yeah,
water. We're mostly water, I just thought of too, right? Water's depicted many times as a blue color.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And honestly, like, and from being near Lake Superior, it can change. There's so many shades of blue, but they're all blue. There's a blue gray, there's a deep blue, there's a brilliant blue, there's a cerulean
Blue.
blue.
Yeah. Mhm.
Lots and and you're wearing blue eyeshadow.
Actually, Kevin or Z Sun Dragon, he said blue beings come to mind.
Oh yeah.
I do, and Archangel Michael is depicted in blue, Kathy
Oh,
says. Very true.
oh, actually, that's an excellent point. So
Mhm.
I think, yeah, I was amazed to see a Santa in blue. Sometimes he's also depicted in purple. Um,
Ooh.
so those are, that you can see that now. I think that is associated. Purple is a color that is associated with royalty, and that's for one very specific plant-based reason. The plants that you needed to actually create the color purple. It's a difficult color to create in
Mhm.
in a dye, in a
I can believe it.
non-synthetic dye.
Yeah.
And so to get that color and actually color and get it enough in fabric to stay, to get that really rich royal color, was very extravagant. And so there was a period of time in which only royalty had that color purple. But that's a
I
really,
can
yeah,
believe it. Well,
yeah.
what Kason brought up a good point here. He's over in Sri Lanka, and he says, I've also heard that Santa Claus is a symbolism to psilocybin mushrooms, meaning the hallucinogenic for some people, that if you're not sure what that means. And he said bright red and white. And we do see
Oh,
this associated with the gnomes and fairies and stuff. Have you heard anything about
right. So this, I think maybe what he's thinking of, or what comes to mind for me, are the Amanita muscara, which are the sort of the toadstools. Psilocybin mushrooms aren't necessarily
yeah, they don't have
toadstools. There are a lot of different hallucinogens. There's a lot of
yeah.
mushrooms. If you lick them, strange things ensue, and often death. So I'm not going to advocate for that. However, um, I do understand what he's saying. The red and white,
Mhm.
the toadstools, right? Those things that we see, the
Yeah.
Smurf house, the we see gnomes depicted with that.
Mhm.
And they certainly were something that, unless you had heavy snowfall, you would see, you do see a lot of mushrooms this time of year. And so you certainly did see them. I have read a after snowfall, unless it was sort of immediately after.
Mhm.
But you will see red holly berries. You will see red twig dogwood. And also everything's scarcer. So if there is something red in the forest, it could be a mushroom. Not, it doesn't snow everywhere, right?
Yeah.
You would see that and it would stand out, and there wouldn't be many other colors this time of year, right? It's like red, white, and green or brown are pretty much what you get. You
Mhm.
don't get all the brilliance of pinks and blues and all of those colors that come up in purples in the springtime. But I've heard that, and I've heard some very interesting theories about the ingestion of toadstools and those leading to the idea of sort of some kind of magical guy that goes from house to house, but utterly rooted in reality in a way, because there are many examples of people looking to sort of, again, blame witches for, and that the 12 nights of Christmas are not simply holy nights. They are times of high magic, and a lot of things can take place during this time. So, for example, you could go to your well to pull water anytime during the 12 days, but if and get your beautiful fresh water. But if you should be out there on midnight on Christmas Eve, you will pull blood from your well.
Ooh.
Your animals, you may hear animals talking. And I actually have a story in one of my books, the Fairy, Puka, and Changeling book, where a guy is basically like walking home a little too late on Christmas Eve. And
I read this one, I remember.
he gets caught unawares, and he hears his animals in the stable speaking.
Mhm.
And it's very disturbing what they have to say. I mean, essentially, it's like Animal Farm. They are plotting against the humans. They are not particularly happy with their treatment. So all kinds of high magic, and in fact, quite a few. It's said that that's the night, as we say with Samhain, it's a night when witches are out there cavorting with the devil. But the witches don't cavort with the devil. They just hang out with all the nature spirits.
Yeah.
So that people were ingesting rye with ergot, which is a kind of fungus, which causes hallucinations. And they didn't realize that was happening. So they would like look out, and, you see something out of the corner of your eye, and you're just like, oh, that's Mary Jane from down the road. And she's cavorting. She's out there cavorting with the ghosts. And I'm pretty sure, all like mayhem ensues, right? And there's werewolves and vampires that are coming through. And, under the cloak of darkness, who's to say what's out there? And so it's said that during these 12 nights of Christmas, it's not just a time of, piousness or giving or any of those things, but it's a time when magic, and again, the veil is very thin. Magic is at an all-time high. It's an excellent time for rituals, and that, to be very careful who you're talking to late at night, because it could be, some sort of demonic entity in disguise, if you're lucky.
Okay. No, but what I was going to add, hi, Marshall. Marshall Martin's here, one of our regulars too. So welcome. What I was going to say, and we're almost out of time. I hate this.
You said this was going to happen. You said this was going to happen, and here we are. Yeah.
It always does, but we'll have her back. And you guys, I will try and warn you, bring your questions, because I usually do, and when Del was doing this too, have you at least, if we can, at least, with the seasons changing, because she knows so
it's
much, Varla, you do. But what I was going to add quickly, 12 is a magical number. Obviously, we had 12 apostles, 12 days of Christmas. And the one thing I was going to add, I was just talking to my youngest son, Justin. He's the one that has severe autism. And I always say we have the magic of Christmas every year, because he still plays with toys. He'll be 26 in March, and all the traditions and believing in Santa, and we got to put the Santa key out because we don't have a chimney, and things like that.
Oh, I love that.
I'm making them. Actually, I was just working on one before we went live. I made a mold of our Santa key, and I'm hand painting them. So we'll see how they work out. But what I was going to
love that. Oh, that's that's beautiful.
There's a beautiful movie out there, and I was asking if he remembered it, and he didn't. And it's called Annabelle's Wish, and it talks about the magic of Christmas when the animals have their voice for one night.
Oh, yeah. Yes, the one night. Yes. Well, I mean, that's amazing, because there was a man named there's a book, it was, I believe, published in 1912, and it was called Christmas Traditions, Pagan and Christian. Ooh. And this guy, Clement, I think it was Clement Miles, wrote it. And it's really interesting. It's a little dusty in terms of language. It was written in 1912 by a man educated in the Victorian era. So it's a bit dusty, but it's fascinating because he kind of just reports on all of these traditions, and some of them are pretty outrageous and some of them are just very, he draws a lot of parallels, and it's just interesting that somebody was kind of really doing that in 1912, sitting there thinking like,
back then.
well, right, because back then,
I want to give you time for people to find you and
oh
everything.
yeah, okay.
Where can they find you? Where can they find your podcast, your books? And please, I know I'm going to hit you up again. We'll use my booking calendar, and hopefully I can have her come back just in the new year,
I
you
would love
guys,
to.
and she can
Yes.
talk more.
Definitely. So my website is varlaventura.net. My podcast is called Midnight Stories, and it's currently available everywhere you can get a podcast except Apple, because I haven't cracked the Apple code yet. But I'll be working on that. You can, so basically, you can go on iHeartRadio and Spotify and all those places and get it. I think Google Play. Apple just has some things you have to do, and it's a lot of logging in and unlogging and submitting, and I just sort of get lost in that rabbit warren, and then I give up and I just go have a drink, honestly. So yeah, goal, get on Apple Podcasts, because that's where I consume a lot of my podcasts, so I want to be on there. I'm just lagging, but you can find that Midnight Stories. I've got another one that should be, there's one on there should be one forthcoming in the next couple of days. I've submitted it. And then what else, just appearing on, I'm on Spaced Out Radio once a month, on Coast to Coast occasionally, and I hope actually 2024 brings me a couple of IRL engagements. I have a couple of cons I'm trying to attend, paracons and such like that, so I can meet people in real life, and so you can just find me. My books are in print. You can find them in all the places. They are small and make excellent stocking stuffers. And
they're great books, you guys. I have read some of them. The first time I had you on, you sent me a couple of your books, and I read them. That was years ago.
When my gosh, I know. Well, thank you so much for having me all these years. It's wonderful.
Oh, I just adore you. I have a few people that are audience favorites, and you are one. And one more other person, and they'll ask me, when are you having this person back? Or I get lots of messages.
Thank you for telling me that. You don't always hear that, but that's really nice. And you're easy to talk to, and we always run out of time.
Love you in our house, we do. So
I love you guys too.
I want to thank you guys so much for being here, your kind comments, your questions. I want to remind you that I will be back here on Thursday with David Hansel with The Thing at the Foot of the Bed, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm sure we're going to be talking something spooky about holidays because we're getting close. Also, don't forget, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Spirit Switchboard with Carrie Lynn Shellhorn and the winner of her 12 Days of Giving. We're hanging out with the lucky winner, and you guys, please join us. We're going to be talking all things spooky, scary. You guys can ask questions. I think Carrie Lynn's got a whole bunch of stuff booked, so make sure to check that out this coming Friday. And also, next Monday, I cannot believe this time is speeding up. It is Christmas time. So I have decided I am doing a show live for anybody that maybe doesn't want to watch Christmas programming. Maybe you're feeling a little bit alone for whatever reason. Maybe you don't celebrate at this time of year. You've got a different holiday you do. That's okay. Come hang out with me on the Interrock next week. It's going to be an open show. So we're talking whatever you guys all want to talk. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm also doing one January 1st too. So those two shows are the only ones I have open, I believe, till almost sometime in April. I still have some spots in March, though, so I got to send you my booking calendar.
Oh, yeah. Always nice to book around St. Patrick's Day. We can get into
fairies. And I think I have it open, so we'll do that. You guys, if you're enjoying the paranormal, please stay tuned, because you got Philip and Julia Siracusa right up after this with the Horsefly Chronicles. Love you guys so much. Love you, Varla.
Happy
holidays.
Happy holidays.
And we will see you guys on Thursday, okay? Thanks again for everybody.